GM. Hi everyone, episode 10 of Hot Takes and Cold Wallets. Nikita, Juan, how you doing?
Hey, doing great.
Yeah, doing well. The week's going really good, so things are moving.
We got a fourth screen here today, and this guy is JP, aka Rug Pull Finder. JP, how you doing, man?
It's Friday. I'm always good on a Friday. Always.
So for everyone who doesn't know JP yet, he is the founder of Intelligence On Chain, and he's actually doing crypto tracing and basically the aftermath after a crypto scam happens and after everything went to shambles. So we got Chain Patrol, who are doing the prevention side of things with the brand protection and yeah, the
Walk
systems
the
in place.
scams and phishing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The systems in place to prevent phishing and impersonators and all that stuff. And we got JP who's doing like the back end of things if things go wrong. So this is gonna be like an interesting episode because we got the perfect mix, I guess. So when things go wrong, I think this is like a good place to start. I think if we're talking about like Chain Patrol trying to stop the fire, JP is probably showing up when the house is already burning. So JP, what's the first thing that you look into when someone like approaches you or reaches out to you guys and says like, "Hey, I've been hacked"? What you guys like are usually doing on your end?
I mean, first it's about timing, right? So if it's real time, which can happen, it's fairly infrequent actually, but it can happen. Then we've got more chance of being able to do something about it. But if it's a historical case, you're always going to struggle. So I'm looking at the timing first. Is it historical or is it real time? If it's real time, then we're in high alert. We're monitoring the wallets, we're checking for deposit addresses, things like that. But historical, typically, it's not as urgent, and so you've got naturally a little bit more time to work with. So that's the first thing, is timing.
Yeah, I think just on that like topic, like that's what we've seen from like so many people, right? Is that like even if it's like a few hours ago might still be okay. I guess what does real time for you mean? Like how much time can it pass before you're counting this as like it's historical? Is it like an hour? Is it like a day? Like when can you still take some sort of action?
Well, I think you need to define what taking that action is. And for me, it's being able to intercept them at an exchange, right? Intercept the assets at an exchange. So, we have a case open from nearly 2 years ago where the assets are still sat in the wallet. They haven't moved. And we're talking like 3 million. They haven't moved, and it's probably because that wallet's blacklisted. So if they hit an exchange, they're probably going to get frozen anyway. But that for me is an opportunity. If those assets move today into an exchange, there might be something that we can do. It depends, but excuse me, even then, there's so many variables because which exchange is it going into? How quick can people react and things like that. But then again, going back, I'm going to say 6 to 9 months or something like that, we had an individual who had a CryptoPunk stolen, right? And this was this was happening just like 10 minutes ago. So he reached out, and those assets were swapped on the CryptoPunk was sold at lower price. They got ETH in return, which clearly you can't do anything about whilst it's on chain. But that hit OKX, and we've got connections at OKX. So we reached out, got the assets frozen, and temporarily, I must admit, they give a 2-week freeze window, and by that time, the victim's able to get police and law enforcement involved. So it really depends on what the status is, but ideally you're looking for assets in an externally owned wallet that's easily linked to the crime, but at the same time you're waiting for that to move into an exchange that you can do something about. That's really what it comes down to.
That's interesting that they give some time for the police to get involved, because yeah, as an exchange it must be a very tricky thing, right? Somebody reaches out to you, they're like, please freeze these assets. You might, I mean, for yourself, they know you, so they know your data is good. But I can see it being a tricky case for the exchanges too, right? Because like again, false positives or accidentally flagging the wrong account could also be lead to a very unhappy user. So I think it's interesting that they do a temporary freeze, because if you're a regular user, okay, that's annoying, unfortunate, but at least it's not like some sort of permanent freeze, and you know that after a few weeks you'll get all your stuff back. And then meanwhile, this like gives you time. Do you feel like 2 weeks is a reasonable window to get like somebody involved and support, or like would you wish it was a little bit longer?
It's one of the longer windows, honestly. Some will give you 72 hours, which isn't
Wow.
much at all.
Yeah,
So yeah, 2 weeks is
pretty generous.
yeah, is pretty good. So and to be honest, with a with a loss like with a CryptoPunk, you're talking probably 100K, and typically local law enforcement, if they've got it served on a platter, they okay, I can't say everyone, but they would probably give it a go, especially if the account's already frozen, right? So there's things that they could do there. But yeah, it's it varies. But sometimes that exact same thing could happen and we was a minute or two late, So timing is everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any exchanges, JP? I don't want to name names here, obviously, but are there any exchanges that like don't comply at all?
Oh yeah, you got, KuCoin, they're dreadful. HTX, Huobi, you get nothing from them. Your big ones tend to be okay, like your Coinbase, your Binance, and things like that. But you will need to be law enforcement unless you've got great connections there. We've had successful freezes at MEXC, OKX. Trying to think of any more. So it really depends. But some of them, they don't even respond to police requests, to be honest.
Nikita, JP, maybe this is one like a broader scope question for you guys both. Do you think that the victims that get scammed or tend up to get scammed, do they actually know what happened, what went wrong, or are they like clueless before they reach out to anyone for help?
80% of the time, I think they know what's happened. I think there's 20% of the time that, at least based on my case history and things, there's 20% of the time they've got no clue at all. Like nothing's obvious. Maybe they haven't even touched the wallet in a couple of years and it's just been drained. That can happen. It has happened. So yeah, I would say 80%, 85%, something like that.
Yeah, I would say similar, where usually they understand like at least some of the steps involved in what happened. Like, oh, I went to a website and I got drained, or I downloaded a file and then suddenly my funds are gone. Some attackers do sit on your machine for a while, so it also depends a little bit on like many of the attackers, they just go like right away, steal whatever I can and kind of get out. But some will like maybe infect your machine with malware or something similar, and then kind of sit there and wait, see if like you connect anything else. There's some of the drainers, like sometimes they won't even drain you like at all. Like they have like this it's funny, some of the drainers have this function like user is too poor, and then they won't even do anything just because they're like, it's not worth it, and they don't want to burn their site or whatever, because they know we're also looking after them and trying to find them and running all sorts of like simulations and other stuff to catch them. So they'd rather not give up their site or give up their drain or this kind of thing. So they try to make it a little bit more targeted. But yeah, generally I would say most users know what happened, unless it's one of these like more rare cases where there's also some people, like if it was like maybe like a ledger or something that got drained in some, or like a private key that was stolen that they don't check regularly, then there's sometimes surprises, right? But other than that, usually they do know.
Okay, I wanna talk to Juan on the next one. So we're moving into the next one, which is like forensic versus protection, which is basically the essence of this clash that we got today with JP on the back end and Chain Patrol on the front end. Juan, maybe what do you think? What's your take on why users or teams even, why do they still underestimate the scope of prevention, I would say? Because I think like prevention is the biggest defense we have. Why do they think like prevention is still underrated in the space?
That's a great question. I would say that it depends on how much they're involved in crypto. Like if they're only touching exchanges, probably they don't have like a lot of experience on like different hacks that happen in crypto. And once they start like going into these like decentralized communities, once they start like joining and getting into into like first official Telegram and Discord channels, they start seeing like, hey, there is like a huge world apart like just from buying my crypto on this exchange and just trade that way. So I would say a user coming from that background is usually like unprotected and doesn't have like the security measures in his mind that he actually needs to approach. Like I would ask like your father or like your sister, like, hey, do you know about like fake Discord chats that can drain your wallet? You are probably talking like a different language when you say that. And I would say like a lot of users coming from this background, like, or they just want to have like their first money in crypto, don't know at all about like different things that can happen. So I would say those are the users, of course, that can get drained pretty easily. And that's like the users that we need to protect the most, because if the user usually gets scammed at that certain point, a lot of chances that they don't get into crypto again, at least for some time. So I would say that's like really important on the protection side of things, that at least from Chain Patrol side we can do, like protecting all these companies from that specific scams. And yeah, like then users that get like much more experience and know about like, hey, I can get hacked if I click in a wrong website, or I can get hacked if like my private keys get leaked, or if I like do something that is like I put like a weird approval on a DeFi protocol and that DeFi protocol got exploited. Those are users that needs like more information on the security, and also need to know like what they can do after this hack happens. Because I think there is like a lot of knowledge about like what you can do to prevent once you get hacked, but it's not so many things that you know like step by step what you need to do after you get hacked, right? So I think is in our place like security companies and security people involved in the space to provide like those information to not only users that just recently come here, but users that get hacked and have like really big problems after they get interaction with these DeFi protocols, for example.
JP, what would you say from your cases that you've seen? Where do these losses like actually start? Do they start on human behavior level, or is it more like because the tech is too complicated? What's the culprit usually?
Well, even if you're talking about the tech being too complicated for who? It's people, right? I think the vector is most of the time is people. It's social engineering. It could be, lack of confidence. It could be just a little bit too technical for people. I had a call the other day from an individual who was an art dealer, and she lost 200,000 USDT, right? And it was a targeted attack, right? So they knew her name, knew her background, knew phone number and everything. And it was for all intents and purposes, it was what looked like a legitimate company out of Switzerland. But during the phone call, or whatever it was on Zoom or whatever, they shared the address to send the 200K to, but it was the address that she was expecting, but with .eth at the end of it, which was a domain that somebody had purchased to replicate that one. But actually the underlying address was completely different, right? So you can't expect everyday users, your mom, your dad, family members to know about things like that, especially in, potentially a high pressure situation like that. Whereas, it seemed real for all intents and purposes. And I don't think that's anything down to the individual being, stupid or anything like that. I think it's just down to the vectors that these guys have and know and, use to exploit, honestly. But your people are generally the weakest link, I would say, across most hacks and exploits and things.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a really interesting one, because like I know about like address poisoning and this kind of stuff, but like the fact that you can just add a .eth at the end of an address and it goes somewhere completely different, that's something wallets I feel like should flag, like, or show something on. It's like, by the way, this looks like an address. You're going to be sending to this other address. That's an interesting.
Especially like, what's the point of an ENS address, which basically like shortens your address when you just like have the whole address inside of it? Like, why is it even allowed to have like certain amounts of characters or whatever?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I would just add quickly that I think a lot of users come from the background also of like banking and all this other stuff, and right. And they're like, typically, if you make a mistake, there's like somebody you can call and they can like reverse the transaction, or you can like, even if it's down multiple banks, usually there's a bit more you can do. Also, honestly, many times not like a ton, but a bit, there's a bit more you can do, right? I think users come with that kind of burden of responsibility, not on themselves, but on like the provider, right? And the way a lot of things in crypto are set up right now is they enter the space, but they don't realize that that burden of responsibility is not on the third parties as much. It's more so on them because of the way the systems are set up right now. I do think the companies need to take more responsibility and make an easier place for, because otherwise I do think that affects adoption, just because like if more and more people get drained and they're like, oh my God, if I put this .eth at the end, I'm going to get drained. If I look at my transaction history and I click the wrong one on here, I'm going to get drained, or I'm going to send the funds to the wrong place. If users have to just constantly think of all of this, they're just going to stop using the tech and go back to, okay, I'm going to send my wire instead. So I do think the responsibility needs to be on the companies providing the software, like the wallets, the exchanges, and others, to really address these issues.
Nikita, we talked about Chain Patrol is being there for stopping the fire, basically. And how long before a scam happens you usually see these signs like arising with all your monitoring systems and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we see sites very early. So like what we do is we scan things like newly registered domains, certificate transparency logs. That's when like a website gets like the security certificate for like SSL or like the HTTPS you see. So we very often see these sites within the first minutes that they appear. Like our goal really is to, stop them before they reach a user. So we might find like a drainer site, I don't know, like arbsupport.com or something, some fake website. We put that on the block list. That block list goes out to wallets like, MetaMask, Phantom, others, Coinbase Wallet, or the Base app now. And a lot of these, the goal is to really shorten that window as much as possible. And before, years ago, that was like hours or something. They got to about 30 minutes. Now, within around 5 minutes of us finding something that like a malicious domain, it gets distributed across all of these major wallets. And then they start showing warnings to users. So that is one angle, at least, that we are covering very well. So those attacks we see quite early. And so a lot of them are getting prevented. There's still others that are not, but we have really good coverage with at least the companies we protect. Some of the trickier attacks, I would say, is anything where, DMs, especially, like if somebody's reaching out to you on Telegram and they're just chatting with you, they're pretending to be a regular person. Those attacks are very challenging to catch, especially if, they are just pretending to be another regular user. Maybe they want to do an over-the-counter deal or something similar. And then they're scamming you through that way. That is very difficult. It's difficult for us. It's difficult for, these other transaction simulation companies and others, because at the end of the day, you're just sending money to someone, right? How do you know that you sending money to one party and you're sending them 10K is a good thing, and sending the same 10K to another address is a bad thing, right? And so these attacks are more challenging, and that's where we do see like loss of funds, that, and like compromise. Honestly, compromised seed phrases is still one of the highest actually sources of loss of funds, despite like everybody like banging the bell or whatever, or the gong saying don't give up your seed phrase. I think part of it is people still giving it up. Part of it is still people getting malware, and that's where it's kind of hard to catch, is on the really the DM level, the targeted spear phishing. We have some work for that, where if it's somebody we know getting impersonated, like if it's one of the companies we protect, we actually map out all of their employees, and so we find everybody that's impersonating their employee. But if somebody approaches you as just like, hey, I'm Joe, like I'm a NFT enthusiast, I really like your collection, I'd like to put in an offer and then send me money here, those are challenging to catch right now by anybody.
JP, from your investigations, I think like we have a good scope of things with Nikita and the Chain Patrol guys, and also us as at Revoke.cash and the support tickets. I told like in earlier episodes, I told the guys that like maybe 80% of the tickets that we get in Revoke.cash discords are compromised seed phrases or private keys. What do you think from your experience? Do users usually like, do they fall for approvals? Like I think this has scaled down a bit personally, or do they still fall for malware and all of that stuff?
Yeah, approvals has gone down for sure, and I think that's with the wallets have got smarter. They've integrated tools like I guess Chain Patrol, X Wallet Guard, Pocket Universe, those sorts of tools. So people see that warning up on the screen, and that is a message just to pause, right? It just pauses the thinking, and that makes them think, hold on, that's not what I wanted to do. Like send 100K out, that's not what I wanted to do. But so I mean, it's a mix. So we get, I would say my most common one is probably like your pig butchering, fake investment platforms where they send to an address rather than a smart contract. But when it comes to seed phrases, there's two vectors that I've seen more recently. One is malware on a website, which actually this one happened over months. So again, it's grooming, really grooming the victim. They'll gain the trust, they'll take a few deposits, they'll show some form of value back on a fake screen or whatever it is. And then when the in one particular case, and it wasn't the same for every victim, so even the attackers have different methods of getting assets from the victims. Some can be just socially engineered, others will be socially engineered as well, but also click on this website, click this link, and then all of a sudden all your assets have gone. But I've also heard actual conversations, because one of them was recorded, where a guy here in the UK, he got a call like 2-3 in the morning from the police, okay, and it was along the lines of, your accounts have been hacked, okay, so there's some urgency there. You've got an authoritative person on the phone, it's the police, it's high alert, you're tired, you've just woken up, you're confused, and the police essentially gave instructions to provide the seed phrase after an hour and 20 minutes, by the way. This is not just a quick phone call and get on and give me a seed phrase. This is an hour and 20 minutes of hard, confusing graft for the attacker, right? But at the same time, sorry, it's confusing for the victim, but the attacker is an expert salesman, I think, in most of these cases. And when you're tired, you've just done a long shift, it's in the middle of the night, the police are phoning you and it's urgent, 9 times out of 10, I think most people would respond in a similar way, even though they know that they shouldn't be given a seed phrase. It's human psychology. It's social engineering 101. It's so there's a mix.
I think it's definitely the fear they put in you, right? It's it just unwinds all of your own defense mechanisms, right? And so, yeah, definitely. I mean, if I got a call from the police, like obviously, like there's some ways you can try and verify it and all this other stuff, but like you're saying, you're tired, or you're maybe, I don't know, you had some beers with your friends or something, like you never know what kind of mental state a person is in when you receive one of these. And so whatever security measures you have in place, you yourself can unwind them. So if they get to you, they get past all your security.
Yeah, I mean, I had one the other day. A scammer called me. They had no idea who I was, but they had my Coinbase details, right? But so that was the police. This was 2 weeks ago. That was the police, the Met in London, and I was listening to what they were saying. I knew what it was after about 5 or 10 minutes, but the first 10 minutes I was sold. Like, I thought that was the police, but then I realized, I thought, okay, I know what this is. So I let him continue because I was listening to the structure of what he was telling me. And it was, it started off saying, they've arrested some people in London. One of them had a fake driving license, and it matches your details. I'm like, okay, that's where he had me. I thought, okay, it's possible. And then it went into where have you shared your driving license? Have you shared it on some form of KYC? And then it led into the crypto side of things. And at that point, I knew what it was. And I said, actually, no, I don't think it was an exchange. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't an exchange. I've not dealt in crypto. And then they hung up. So, it's it can be really convincing, and I don't think anyone should feel foolish if they go through that, because these, at the end of the day, are experts at what they do. I don't think I've seen anyone so committed to the work that they do besides scammers. They're in a bad way, they are incredible, if that makes sense, at what they do from a social engineering perspective.
Yeah, they're really good at what they do, and I think that's an important point to anybody that's a victim out there, that don't feel ashamed of it, right? I think that's a really important part, is that from what we've seen, just talking to all different investigators, the one thing I keep hearing is that there's victims that may not even provide all the details right away, or they might even avoid reaching out to somebody. They reached out, and like you're saying, that timing is really important. So getting to an investigator as quickly as possible is very important. But a lot of people feel that shame because they're like, well, how did I do this? I'm so stupid. This is it's so embarrassing, right? But really, you need to understand, you were targeted by a professional that does this for a living, and you're a regular person that's not an expert in security or in social engineering defense or any of these other things, right? So what you need to do is get to an expert.
Yep. What I wanted to cover today was a topic that I've seen a lot, and you see a lot of on different social media platforms when we're talking about crypto. We're always seeing the topic of crypto recoveries, and JP, I know that you are pretty upfront about this, so I wanted to discuss this with you first. From your personal experience, from your investigations and cases you had in the past in the court, etc., what percentage of cases do you think realistically end up in a meaningful recovery at all in crypto? Because this is a super important thing for the audience to notice.
Mm-hmm. Again, it depends. The chances are low, right? Just before we start, the chances are low, I think, in most cases. Real-time cases, as discussed, it's possible, but you still need to go through that process with law enforcement, because it is 99.9% of the time, it is only law enforcement who can start that process of recovery if those assets have been frozen. I've been informed on LinkedIn through Zero Shadow that they've been able to get assets recovered. I've not seen it. I don't know the details, but they've got their Chainalysis, right? So they're pretty well connected as well. But it's low. It really is. I would say I did this experiment a couple of weeks back on my X profile, where I said it was drained, right? Do you remember them? You used to put that and used to get hundreds of comments. I'll contact this guy, reach out to this guy, whatever. So I did that. I just thought, what's it like these days? And it's nowhere near as bad as what it was, but you still get comments to reach out to these certain people. And what was really interesting about that is, these were crypto recovery specialists. This is what they do. Every account was from Africa, every single account, which was really interesting. And the thing that people need to remember is, regardless of how good that profile looks in terms of being able to recover assets or hack them back or whatever it is, it's not possible without law enforcement. And one of the great things X has added recently is the fact that you can see where the account's created from. I think that's a great thing. Mine looks like it's from elsewhere, but that, sometimes it's not perfectly accurate, but that's because we use VPNs and stuff. But these are from Africa, and if you've seen a crypto scam recovery artist from Africa, there should be some red flags being raised because they do not have the skills to hack something back. You can't unless you've got the private keys, right? They probably need to hack the scammer, but then that's not legal either. So it's a really complicated thing. So the general rule of thumb is investigators or companies, the best that they can do is freeze. Right, the best that they can do. Then it needs to be handed over to law enforcement. They need to do that recovery process, and you'd want them to do the recovery process, right? Because they're a trusted government party. You wouldn't want some random guy doing the recovery process, I don't think. But it's historically, over my cases, easily less than 10% of cases where people get a substantial recovery back. Yeah, so it's as low as that. I'd probably say it's even lower than that, to be honest.
Nikita, I know you gotta drop soon. I wanted to ask you, like, do you think that hope is like a bit of a hopium that is sold sometimes in the space because people fall too easily for false promises of people like promising recoveries and all that?
Yeah, I mean, what we see is that, the attackers that have stolen funds from you, they will try and hit you in multiple waves, right? JP was talking about the rug pulls not the rug pulls, the pig butchering scams, for example, and there they will attack you. They will keep stealing funds. When they think that you're onto them, they will say, "Oh, we can recover your funds if you send us some more," or like send you to some, or try to start to scare you, or then they put you. It's kind of like a whole like funnel, like of, or decision tree of like, okay, as soon as they see that you're onto them, try to pull out whatever they can, and then you may even start getting targeted with these, fake like recovery accounts and all this stuff as well. I do think like you just need to know how to find a trusted source well. I think the most important advice in all these situations is just like, number one, don't panic, right? You need to be operating from as cool of a position as you can. And that means, go do some research. Where can you find, a trusted solution? Don't pause trusting any DMs you receive. And if you follow these steps well, one, hopefully you won't get drained further, right? That's one thing you want to prevent. Like, okay, you've lost a certain amount of funds. Doesn't mean you're no longer a target. You can still be getting targeted. And then hopefully you can get to recovery. Now, like we're saying, how often it actually happens, it really depends on the specifics of the case. But I do think things are getting better. There are more exchanges are starting to be able to freeze funds. Some don't still, but I think it's been improving overall. Just more people are forming networks. Like investigators like JP have their own connections. We now have connections. All the security people are starting to know each other better and just like share support to each other. And it's like a network of security kind of folks just being built out in real time across crypto. And so that is giving some hope, but if anybody promises you that, they're going to get you all your funds back, that is a big red flag. That is a big red flag, and you have to watch out.
Or even just say that there's a good chance of recovery.
Yeah.
Anything that sounds optimistic in terms of recovery, you should be questioning.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Nikita,
Awesome.
do we have to let you go already?
Yeah, I think I do need to drop, but JP,
Okay.
great meeting you. And
Juan will stay a bit, I guess, and JP as well. We're gonna do two
Yeah.
more talk questions.
nice. Yeah, very, very entertaining session. Thank you all.
Take care.
Nice one. Take
Bye.
care, Nikita. Nice. So I wanted to ask this, Nikita, but Juan, still you're here. And so I wanted to ask you, like, why do you think? What's your opinion on people still being like careless when it comes to verifying links or verifying accounts from like trusted brands and like at the end of the day like falling for impersonators? Why are people still like careless with these?
Yeah, I will say that in a lot of cases it comes like from a verified and trusted source, and you don't actually know when that person got like hacked or compromised. So I would say people in crypto that has been here for years usually falls for those kinds of scams because it comes from someone that already had like already previous contacts, and it was like from a verified account. I have actually seen like a lot of, for example, like fake Zoom link calls happening because of that. Like one account take over from one scammer, and that person start sharing fake links or fake Zoom link calls, and that's where people basically drops. I would say that's like for more experienced people in crypto that has been here for a couple of years, they still like keep on following on that. And then, you have like all these different links and phishing websites being shared in a Discord chat. And it's kind of the same. Like whenever you reach out for support, you have a need. And I think scammers are smart when it comes to try to solve that need. So they send you these DMs, they try to be helpful, like if they were like a good actor, but we know that they are not. Pretty much sending you DMs on Twitter, send you DMs on Discord, on Telegram, and that's usually the way that a regular user comes and falls for these scams. Of course, as JP mentioned, I think they're like really complex and really well done, like social engineer attacks, but those are like usually more like targeted scams, right? But yeah, I would say on general links that are being shared are for these two kind of, I would say, groups of people.
JP, did you see any fundamental shift in the last, let's say, 2 to 3 years? I think you've been doing this since 2021, correct me if I'm wrong. But did you see like any major shift lately when it comes to AI and other stuff?
We've seen the DPRK cases, right, where they've used AI to change the faces. And we have seen cases where on the pig butchering side where, bad actors use AI to impersonate a famous person. That can be done and has been done and will continue to be done. I think the issue that we've probably got these days as well is the other things that AI enables. So like you can knock up a really good looking website that looks really legitimate, with a good smart contract that seems fine. And all of a sudden a back door opens up in the smart contract, right? And then your assets are drained that way. But that's not new. I think AI is making it's lowering the barrier of entry for scammers to go and scam people, right? From a technical perspective. It means you don't necessarily need to have all the skills that you used to you used to require to carry out some of these, right? Because writing malware is a very specific skill. And I'm not saying all scammers use malware, but they could just ask ChatGPT certain methods of how to attract people to a certain website, or even things like SEO on a website. It can pull people into it, right? And so there's a lot of good things about AI, and I use AI all the time. It helps me a ton of times, but at the same time, it's like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. But yeah, impersonation is probably the biggest one for AI scams, I would say, at the moment.
Do people usually realize when they fall for like a fake brand or a fake, let's say, influencer or whatever, usually when it's just too late, or do they realize in time? What's your perception of this? Like, do they fall when you have cases? Did they fall for like some random investing on-chain liquidity protocol thing, or did they fall, let's say, for like a Coinbase clone?
I think it's hard to say because there's not too much data in terms of how many people have come across the site and declined to go any further, right? You only tend to see the cases where people have lost assets. So it's really hard to sort of make that comparison. But I've even seen, I remember one lady from Canada, she lost about $600,000. there was a number of different impersonators, which started on one of them. The first one started on LinkedIn, right? She just got divorced, so she's vulnerable, and she was new to LinkedIn. She advertised that she was new to LinkedIn, and when people get divorced, they tend to have like an uplift in social media posts and things. And I think that's just a way to express themselves. So somebody cottoned on to that, and was again grooming her over months to build trust, and in fact started a digital relationship. She sent that person money. Turned out that it was a romance scam, but then she had 3 or 4 other impersonation scams, likely by the same people, including like the Prince of Dubai, and it would be the Royal Prince of Dubai at gmail.com. It's crazy things like that you see. But she got scammed 3 or 4 times, I think by the same team, and she still didn't realize that she was getting scammed. There was even law firm impersonator as well, which was I don't know how, but they managed to spoof one of the law firm's email addresses and send a legitimate, what looked legitimate at first glance, an email to this lady saying everything's fine, don't worry about it, you can go ahead with the investment, blah blah blah. And that turned out to be fake as well. So, but again, these guys have got a serious playbook, serious arsenal of different ways and tools that can be used to impersonate and to get your crypto.
We usually, like when we're teaching like the boring security classes, we're usually telling people to ask people that they trust about like investment stuff. Would you say that this would be something that would have prevented some of the cases? Like if you don't do this solo on your own, just like go straight ahead and do whatever you're doing, but you maybe ask a friend or like a trusted person?
I mean, yeah, it's gonna be better than doing it by yourself, but at the same time, I've seen legitimate people get accounts hacked as well. So go and ask your friend who you think is your friend, and they've been hacked. I've seen that. Yeah, I don't know. It's I think the first thing that you should be doing is you should be looking at what security tools you can have in your arsenal. I don't surf the web without a VPN, a malware, anti-malware tool, without tools like Pocket Universe and things like that. If I've got a second machine that I do private investigations on, and I reset it after each investigation, the first things that I install are those things. So I think tools are probably going to be the best help. But then following that, yeah, in this space, because it's so complicated, friends who are in the know are going to be helpful. Or you could just join IOC's Discord and we'll help you out as well.
That's great. That's great. So let's move on to takeaways. I think we had like a lot to discuss already. Juan, what's one thing that teams should start doing today if they aren't already doing it when it comes to like security and prevention, apart from getting a customer or being a customer at Chain Patrol, obviously?
Yeah, I would say it's just to measure like if they expect like growth of their community, they should also expect like growth in scammers trying to target their brand and their company. So I would say they should have create a plan, not only like a marketing plan, but also a security plan. Okay, when is the right time to get in contact with like auditors? When is the right time to get like some measures to protect my Discord more? So those planifications usually like are what we recommend to have like these security practices along like all the different customers. So yeah, even if they are not ready, if they don't want to have like our protection, for example, we also provide like these details of what they should be doing. Most of the cases, yes, like prepare yourself for scammers because they are going to be after you. It's not like a matter of are they going to be after me? It's like a matter of when they are going to be after your company and your team members. So I would say be prepared for that and start like taking actions now because better before than after when the attacks already happened.
JP, I got 2 for you. One is being like, if I have been hacked, what should like the victims do like immediately? What should they stop immediately? And what is actually helpful for work that you do? Like what can people provide for people like you that actually helps you in your work in tracing and investigating the cases?
Okay, so hacks, if you've got assets, first thing you should do is crypto assets. If you've got crypto assets, get them to a new seed phrase on a new device immediately, as quickly as you can. If it's gone past that point, if you're not able to save any assets, then I would switch the machine off, but I wouldn't reset it. And that's because you can get that machine sent off to a specialist, to law enforcement, whoever it is, and they can do analysis on the malware and things like that. And if you've got the malware on your machine, it's going to be very helpful to them. So, let's say you've protected the assets, you switched off the infected machine. At that point, I've seen hack victims go and trace things themselves, and 9 times out of 10 they'll get to a decent place. But if they need support in terms of the tracing, I'd do that, because remember what I said about real-time cases, you have a much higher chance of being able to freeze assets from real-time cases. So if those assets have gone out to an EOA, externally owned address, out to a deposit address, get in touch with that exchange straight away. You don't need an investigator to get involved at that point if it's a pretty simple trace. If it's a complicated trace, then you might need to, but call law enforcement, whether it's IC3, whether it's report fraud here in the UK, report it to your police, and I'd report locally to your police as well at the police station. So that's the first question sorted, I think. And then what was the second one?
The second one was, what is actually helpful to guys like you doing your work that is actually supporting you in your work to help the victims have better chances at, let's say, catching someone and not doing a recovery?
Great music playlists help. But I would say that the best tool that any investigator can have is their network, because you got to have the skills, you've got to understand, and you've got to be able to communicate exactly what you found out to whoever it is, whether it's a layman, a policeman who's 60-year-old, never been involved in crypto before, a lawyer, whoever it is. So you've got to have those skills, but at the same time, you need to be able to get in touch with these exchanges. You need to be able to reach out to platforms and request information, because we can get things like IP addresses from certain companies and things like that as well. So network is great, but then tools as well, I would say. So there's some great tools out there at lower cost compared to where I first started. When I first started, I was literally using digital whiteboards, like Mural and things, and it was a nightmare. I had to search each address first, see if I already had it on my board and things like that. But you get some low-cost tools. I'll put Metasleuth out there, and I think you get what you pay for with these tools. So the lower-cost tools aren't going to be as good as some of the expensive tools. But then you've got Mistrack, which is a little bit more expensive as well, and they have great solutions. But I also think a lot that's helped everybody is tools like Arkham that have a lot of intelligence on there, have a lot of labels and things, so they can actually see what they're interacting with and where assets have gone. I think tools like that are golden to investigators like us.
Okay, so and if I'm a victim, I've just been scammed, I'm reaching out to you, what would be the best stuff I can provide to you to make it easier for you to work with stuff? I guess screenshots, domains, etc.
Depends on the type of scam. I would say initially, we need a transaction hash, we need an address. What's your address? What's the attacker's address? To make that very clear. And then I want to know how it happened. If it was a website link, if it was a social media post, give me the link, because I want to make an archive of that as well. But also dig into that site or whatever it is, because there might be other clues on there as well. So there's a whole raft of information, and that can be provided. And typically with victims, we'll ask, give them a list of things that we think that we could ask for, depending on the case.
Man, this was a great episode. I wish we could go on 2 hours more, but I guess we're gonna have you on sometime again, JP, at least if you're favorable to. Juan, JP, I just wanted to thank you for the time today. I think this was very insightful, especially for people who didn't have anything to do with blockchain forensics yet, and the other side of things with Chain Patrol protecting brands especially. Thank you for the time. Again, everyone, thank you for listening in, for tuning in. And in Germany, we say Auf Wiedersehen, bis zum nächsten Mal. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hello.